The stage lights burned against my retinas as I scanned the sea of faces in the audience. My fingers traced the cool medal of the National Journalism Award in my hands, while the crowd's applause thundered around me. But the 4 empty seats in the front row, reserved specifically for my family, spoke louder than any standing ovation ever could. My phone vibrated in my clutch. A notification appeared, a tagged photo from my cousin Emma. Despite our strained relationship since the family moved, she'd always stayed connected with me on social media, even when my parents discouraged it. I opened it and the world seemed to tilt sideways. There they were, Mom, Dad, and my brother Noah, laughing on a sunlit beach with cocktails raised high. The timestamp showed 2 hours ago, with the caption, "Perfect family vacation day." They hadn't forgotten. They had deliberately chosen not to come. My name is Riley. I'm 29 and an investigative journalist. This is the story of how I uncovered the truth my family buried and made them finally face what they'd done. The weight of the award suddenly felt hollow in my hands. I'd spent 18 months investigating corruption in city housing contracts, working nights, weekends, following paper trails while my colleagues went home to their families. I'd received death threats, had my car vandalized, even temporarily moved apartments, all for this moment. And the people who were supposed to care most hadn't bothered to show up. My acceptance speech was brief, mechanical. The words I'd rehearsed for weeks tasted like ash in my mouth. As I stepped off stage, an event coordinator handed me a champagne flute. "Someone asked me to give you this," she said. "Congratulations." I took the glass, noticing a business card stuck to the bottom. No name, just an address on Oakwood Drive, and the words, "The truth about why they weren't here tonight." The address was familiar. It was our old family home, the one we'd left abruptly when I was 12. Across the room, I caught sight of a tall figure in a tailored suit, watching me intently. When our eyes met, he nodded once before disappearing into the crowd. I recognized him vaguely. I'd seen him before during my investigation, hovering at the edges of city council meetings I'd attended. My phone buzzed again, Mom calling. I silenced it and slipped the business card into my clutch. After the ceremony, I stepped outside into the cool night air, my mind racing. The champagne remained untouched in my hand. My phone vibrated incessantly. Dad, Mom, Noah, all suddenly desperate to reach me after weeks of minimal contact. The contrast was jarring. A sleek black SUV idled at the curb. The window rolled down just enough to reveal the same man from inside. "The truth doesn't wait, Miss Parker," he said, "but they're already trying to get ahead of it." My phone lit up with a text from Noah. "Don't go to the old house. Whatever they're telling you is a lie." I stared at my screen, confused and alarmed. How did Noah know about the old house? I realized the stranger must have approached my family with the same information, and they were now scrambling to control the narrative. I looked at the stranger. "Who are you?" "Jacob Mercer. I've been Wellington Development's security specialist for 17 years, since your family moved from that house. I've been watching all of you on their orders." He extended his hand, revealing a small brass key. "Your parents kept more than just memories locked away in that house." Every instinct screamed at me to walk away, to call my family back, but the image of those empty seats burned in my mind alongside the beach photo. I took the key. "They'll try to convince you it's about protection," he said. "Ask yourself what they're really protecting." As his SUV pulled away, I walked to my car and noticed a manila envelope on the passenger seat. I frowned, remembering I'd left my window cracked open in the parking garage, a careless mistake that Jacob had apparently exploited. Inside was a floor plan of our old house with one upstairs bedroom circled in red and a single photograph. My family seated around an unfamiliar dining table, their faces tight with fear. In the background reflection stood the same man who'd just given me the key. My phone rang again. This time I answered. "Riley, where are you?" Dad's voice was tight, controlled panic vibrating beneath the surface. "Where were you tonight?" I countered, ice filling my words. "That's not important right now. Someone's trying to—" "Not important?" My voice rose. "The biggest night of my career, and you're all on a beach taking family photos?" "Listen to me," he hissed, his tone suddenly sharp. "Did someone approach you tonight? Give you anything?" My fingers tightened around the brass key in my palm. "No, you're lying." The accusation came quick, certain. "Riley, whatever they gave you, whatever they said, it's manipulation. They're using you to get to us." "Using me?" I laughed bitterly. That's rich coming from the father who couldn't bother to show up when his daughter won a national award. "This isn't about your damn award," he snapped, then immediately softened his tone. "Please, just come home. We'll explain everything." "I'm going to get answers," I said, "but not from you." I ended the call and started my car. The drive to our old neighborhood felt like traveling backward in time. We'd left this house suddenly, Dad claiming a job opportunity in another district, Mom insisting the schools were better there. I'd never questioned it until now. As I pulled up to the familiar address, I was surprised I still remembered the way perfectly after all these years. The weekend trips to Grandma's house had always taken us past this street, a painful reminder of what we'd left behind. The house looked smaller than I remembered, paint peeling from the siding, yard overgrown. But a single light burned from an upstairs window. The same room circled on the floor plan. Jacob must have arrived before me to prepare the scene. His knowledge of Wellington's surveillance operation would have given him access to the security system they'd installed to monitor the property. The key slid perfectly into the front door lock. Inside, the house smelled of dust and something metallic that caught in my throat. Most of the furniture was gone, but familiar scuff marks on the hardwood remained. I traced my fingers along the wall where our family photos once hung, now just faded rectangles on yellowed paint. In the kitchen, papers were spread across the counter under a single desk lamp. Property deeds, bank statements, legal documents, all bearing my father's signature. But one caught my eye. A trust agreement naming me as the sole beneficiary of the property, dated 3 days after we'd moved out. I was the legal owner of this house, had been since I was 12, and no one had ever told me. Dad had quietly transferred ownership to me through a trust to protect the property from being seized if his dealings with Wellington were ever discovered. A creak from upstairs broke the silence. The circled bedroom. Heart pounding, I climbed the stairs, each step groaning under my weight. The door at the end of the hall stood slightly ajar, light spilling from within. I pushed it open. The room was nearly empty except for an old wooden trunk against the far wall. But the walls, they were covered with newspaper clippings, photographs, and documents connected by red string. A timeline of my career, from college newspaper articles to my recent investigation. And beside them, surveillance photos of my family taken over years, all featuring the same man in the background, watching. "Your parents have powerful friends." His voice came from behind me. Jacob stood in the doorway. I jumped, not having heard him enter the house after me. He must have parked his SUV around the corner to avoid drawing attention and used a back entrance he knew from years of surveillance work. Friends who don't appreciate journalists digging into their business dealings. "Who are you really?" I demanded. "And why are you helping me now after years of spying on my family?" Jacob Mercer, former security specialist for Wellington Development. He stepped into the room. "The same company your father helped secure those housing contracts you've been investigating. My conscience has been eating at me for years, and when I saw your name on those bylines, I knew this was my chance to make things right." My blood ran cold. "That's impossible. My father works in insurance." "Now he does. 17 years ago, he was Wellington's financial advisor. When certain irregularities appeared in their books, he had a choice. Take the fall or help cover it up. I was hired right after to maintain surveillance on your family and ensure his continued cooperation." "And he chose to cover it up," I said, the pieces clicking into horrible place. Jacob nodded. "Until his daughter started investigating the same people he'd protected. They recognized your name immediately." The trunk's lock snapped open easily. Inside were stacks of financial records, all bearing my father's signature, alongside security footage, recorded conversations, and a separate folder labeled Riley, filled with surveillance photos spanning years. Me at school events, college graduation, outside my apartment. "They've been watching me," I whispered, bile rising in my throat. "Your father made a deal," Jacob said. They'd leave you alone as long as he continued handling certain financial arrangements. But when your investigation started gaining traction, Wellington execs panicked. They demanded your parents remind you of your priorities, hence the conspicuous vacation during your award ceremony. They reminded him of his obligations, I finished, rage building behind my eyes. That's why they weren't at the ceremony. They were sending a message, choosing them over me again. My phone buzzed with a text from Noah. "They're coming to the house. Get out!" Noah must have overheard our parents' frantic conversation after Dad tracked my phone's location through our family sharing app. I looked at Jacob. "Why are you helping me?" "I was assigned to watch your family after the move. I saw what it did to you, the confusion, the hurt, and I saw what your father became living under their thumb." He handed me a flash drive. "Everything they've done is here, including your father's original testimony before he recanted. I've been gathering evidence for years, waiting for the right person to help bring it all down." Headlights swept across the window as a car pulled into the driveway. "What will you do?" Jacob asked. I thought of those empty seats, of years spent thinking I wasn't important enough for my family's time, of the story I'd spent 18 months investigating, never knowing my own father was part of it. "The same thing I always do," I said, tucking the flash drive and documents into my bag. "Follow the truth wherever it leads." My parents burst through the front door as I descended the stairs, my mother's face pale with panic, my father's tight with anger. They must have rushed here immediately after tracking my phone's location, driving the 2 hours from the beach house in record time. "Riley, stop," Dad commanded. "You don't understand what you're doing." "I understand perfectly," I replied, calmer than I felt. "You sold your integrity to Wellington Development years ago. When I started investigating them, you chose to protect them instead of warning me." The color drained from his face. "It was to protect you." By letting me walk blindly into an investigation of the same people who've been controlling our family for years? That's not protection, Dad. That's cowardice. "You have no idea what these people are capable of," he hissed. "Actually, I do. It's my job to know." I held up the flash drive. "And now I have everything I need to finish the story, including your part in it." Mom stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Riley, please, this will destroy our family." "You already did that tonight when you chose that beach over my ceremony." I moved toward the door. "My article runs in 3 days. You have until then to decide if you want to go on record about what really happened 17 years ago." Dad's voice shook. "If you publish this, we'll lose everything." I paused at the threshold, the night air cool against my skin. I already did. The difference is, I'm taking it back. 3 days later, my follow-up article ran with a new byline. "Corruption scandal extends to regulatory oversight. Whistleblower comes forward." The whistleblower was my father, who'd spent 12 hours in my editor's office detailing everything, the threats, the payoffs, the cover-up he'd been part of for 17 years. The investigation expanded to include 3 city officials and the CEO of Wellington Development. My father's testimony in exchange for immunity meant our family lost almost everything. The house in the nice district, the vacation property, the comfortable retirement fund, all built on dirty money from kickbacks and fraudulent contracts that had cost the city millions. I stood in the empty living room of our old house, my house, watching as Jacob supervised the removal of the last surveillance equipment that had monitored our family for years. After cooperating with authorities, he'd received limited immunity in exchange for his testimony against Wellington's executives, who now faced federal charges. "What will you do now?" he asked. Through the window, I could see my mother in the garden, planting flowers in soil that legally belonged to me. My brother carried boxes from his car to the front porch. They'd had no choice but to move back here after everything else was seized as evidence. "Rebuild," I said simply, on truth this time. That night, I placed my journalism award on the mantel of my old bedroom, now my home office. From my window, I could see my family eating dinner together in the kitchen below, their conversation muted but their expressions clear: shame, regret, the uncomfortable weight of consequences. Over dinner the following week, I sat across from my father at the kitchen table. "I forgive you," I said finally, "but trust will take longer." He nodded, accepting this new reality. My mother reached for my hand, and this time, I let her take it. Noah and I had already spent hours talking through his role, how he'd suspected something was wrong, but never had the courage to dig deeper. Emma, my cousin, had apologized for the poorly timed beach photo, explaining she hadn't known about my award ceremony. They'd chosen comfort over honesty for 17 years. Now they were living with the truth I'd uncovered. It wasn't a perfect revenge, nothing ever is. But as I turned back to my laptop and began typing my next story, I felt something I hadn't in years, the certainty that my work mattered and that no one would ever again make me doubt my worth. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.